Welcome to Christ-Centered Home Education. This is our first installment of our World History class. Come join us and see how we keep world history Christ-centered, as it should be. History should never be studied as two separate stories, secular and the sacred. The story of Augustus Caesar, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, should never be presented apart from the story of Jesus Christ. History is utterly meaningless without Christ. It is He who appears as the main event, the main character. He alone gives meaning to history. Without Him, nothing can be held together, and history itself falls to pieces. Thus, the story of history is one story, all of it engagingly interwoven, intensely meaningful, and supremely thrilling. By Kevin Swanson. Welcome to our world history class. Join us as we study the creation of a world as a testing ground, the organization of human civilization, and the rise and fall of the ensuing civilizations. We will study from before the world was to the coming forth of Jesus Christ in the meridian of time. As we go through this class, you may see work samples from 4 different students. 1, an elementary student in 4th grade, 1, a middle school student in 7th grade, 2 high school students, grades 9 and 10. Our first section for this class is the primordial existence, or the pre-mortal life. We talk about what it must have looked like to be without form and void. We talk about the mysterious primordial waters, the war in heaven, the plan, and order from chaos. Because the world around us is so beautiful and majestic, it's hard to imagine the earth when it was without form or void, empty and desolate. One thing the creation story teaches us is that God can make something magnificent out of something unorganized. That's helpful to remember when life seems chaotic. Some of the resources we will use in this particular lesson come from varying sources. We use the Bible Project to help us understand a lot of concepts and use their beautifully animated videos. Here's an example of one.
The first book in the Bible is called Genesis.
And we're going to look closely at the first page of the book of Genesis. It's a carefully crafted narrative about God creating and ordering the whole cosmos.
Okay, let's check it out. Now, the opening line of the whole Bible is, "In the beginning, God created the skies and the land."
Now, your Bible translation might say the heavens and the earth. In biblical Hebrew, the word for heaven refers simply to the sky above. And the word for earth does not mean globe, but rather the land.
The ground below us.
Right. This line is summarizing what's going to happen in the following narrative, which starts in the next line.
And it reads, "Now the land was wild and waste."
This phrase rhymes in Hebrew. The land was tohu vavohu, which means unordered and uninhabited. This is the ancient way of talking about the pre-creation state, what we might call nothingness. For the biblical authors, non-existence means having no purpose and no order. And the next line uses another image to say the same thing.
"And darkness was on the face of the deep abyss." What's the deep abyss?
Yeah, it's a dark, chaotic ocean. It's another common way the ancients described the non-reality that preceded creation. Now, here's where things start to get interesting, because in the midst of those dark waters, God is present.
And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters.
The Hebrew word for God's Spirit is ruach, which can refer to wind or breath or God's invisible presence.
So you can't see it, but God is present in the darkness, ready to bring order so that life can flourish.
Yes, and this ordering happens in a series of 6 days.
Each day begins with the phrase, "And God said." and then ends with the phrase, "And there was evening and morning."
Yeah, every day addresses those problems introduced in verse 2, that there's no order and no inhabitants. So on days 1 through 3, God splits apart that unordered darkness into 3 ordered realms. Then, on days 4 through 6, God fills the uninhabited wasteland with creatures.
Interesting. Let's see how that works.
Okay, so the first realm of order begins with light on day 1.
Ah, yes. Let there be light.
This is God's own glorious light that fills and contains the darkness as he separates day from night. God's establishing the order of time.
Okay, and then on day 2, let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water. What's the vault?
In the ancient culture of the biblical authors, the sky was perceived as a solid dome that holds back waters. God's depicted here as splitting the chaos waters in half, above and below, which creates the realms of the sky and the seas.
And then on day 3, let the waters under the sky be gathered into one place and let dry ground appear.
God is establishing the realm of the land, and it emerges out of the chaotic waters. And then there's a bonus creative act on day 3. God invites plants and fruit trees with seed to emerge out of the land.
Okay, so we've got the realms of time, the realm of the sky and the seas, and the land. And they all have order.
Right. Now, it's time to go back and fill these realms of days 1 through 3 with inhabitants. This is what happens on days 4 through 6.
So in day 4, let there be lights in the vaults of the sky.
God installs these lights, the sun, moon, and stars, as signs and symbols that reflect God's own light. He gives them his own royal power to separate day and night.
Then on day 5, let the waters swarm with living creatures, and let birds fly above the land.
Yeah, these are the creatures that live in the waters below, and those that fly near the waters above.
Then finally on day 6, let the land produce living creatures.
They emerge up out of the ground to live on the land. And then, matching that bonus act of creation on day 3, God makes a special land creature, human, or in Hebrew, Adam. Then God provides all of those plants from day 3 as abundant food.
Now, over and over, God says what he created was good. But then after making humans, God says that it is very good.
Yes, humanity is the climax of days 1 through 6, and their importance is explained in the first poem in the Bible.
So God created humanity in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them.
So humans come up from the ground like the other land creatures, but they're also more. They're God's image, which means that together, men and women embody and represent the Creator within his creation.
God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, ruling over the creatures."
This is the purpose of being God's image, to oversee creation as God's partners and representatives in the world.
Very cool.
Now, after the 6 days, we get a concluding line that links back to the key words of the opening line.
And so were completed the skies and the land and all their inhabitants.
Except there's one more day. It stands outside the pattern of days 1 through 6. It's the big climax.
And God completed on the 7th day the work which he had done. And he rested on the 7th day from all the work which he had done. And God blessed the 7th day and set it apart as holy.
So God rests on the 7th day. This is a standard biblical image where God, after ordering the cosmos, comes to rest and dwell in his sacred space. It's like the whole world is a holy temple where God lives with his people.
Now that phrase, "there was evening and morning," it doesn't appear on day 7.
That's right. The 7th day has no end. That's because Genesis 1 is describing God's ideal vision for the whole cosmos.
A place where God lives with his partners to rule the world in harmony forever.
Yes, the 7th day is the goal of creation. It's actually so important that the author of Genesis 1 has woven the number 7 into every part of the story. There are 7 days of creation, 7 announcements that creation is good. There are 7 Hebrew words in the opening verse, and then 2 times 7 Hebrew words in verse 2. And then the statement about the 7th day has 3 lines of 7 words.
Wow. So the first page in the Bible is doing way more than just telling us how the world was made.
Right. Genesis 1 has been designed to show us that God's purpose is to share creation with his images so they can rest and rule it with him forever. And that purpose is what the rest of the biblical drama is all about.
We use those videos quite frequently in our curriculum, and there are many, many of them, and I would highly encourage your use of that resource. They are completely free, and they are located at BibleProject.com. We like to talk about these waters of chaos, this ancient, mysterious, primordial waters, and we like to look at what the ancients taught about these primordial waters. What did the most ancient civilizations of our world have to say about this state of the world before it was? What did it look like? What was it like? What was there? What wasn't there? Here at the ancienttradition.com are some podcasts that we will refer to frequently. And this one I would highly encourage you to read or listen to. All of the podcasts are completely free, but they're very long, so we're not going to do it here. But I would really encourage you to listen as a teacher, as a parent, and be able to cater to your own children's needs in being able to understand this chaos element in a physical sense and in a symbolic sense. Some other resources that we also used for this lesson also come from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints website, where it details in a lesson plan format a way to go through and study about the creation of the world and about the existence of God and his children before that world was made. From that same website, we can find the preexistence and foreordination of Christ. Here it talks about why the world needed to be created, why Christ is central to that creation. God wanted his children to have a place to go, to learn and to grow and to become like him. But in order to do that, they had to receive a body. They had to lose their memories of the time before and be tested to see what they would do, how they would use their power, and what levels of righteousness they would choose to live when they seemingly had no one to force them. We also introduce in this first lesson our timeline project. The students throughout the year in world history will complete a timeline project. It will include prophets and patriarchs, historical happenings, and any key elements from history that we as a class felt were super impactful on history, or anything that they particularly liked studying also individually as the students. Their very first assignment for this lesson was to draw a depiction of what they believed the waters of chaos might have looked like. And we talked about those waters, those primordial waters, being this giant mass of elements in a chaotic soup-like material. All of the elements that we know of, and probably many, many more, in a state of chaos and disorganization. So our fourth grader drew his picture, and his comments were to talk about the word entropy. He says, "Let me tell you about entropy. Entropy means everything in the universe is constantly moving toward chaos, disorder, or lack of order, unless it's acted upon by an outside source. And that outside source is Jesus Christ. It is his light that keeps everything ordered, and if we don't have Jesus' light, we wouldn't have food, and we wouldn't have life. Here's the middle school student. We had a giant pile of Legos out on the floor to represent this chaos of element soup, and each of the students pulled from this giant pile of Lego chaos and created something with specific elements, specific pieces of Lego. They were able to create something that was ordered and useful. So here our 7th grader says, I have organized chaos with Legos. Like in this picture, you can see all these different labeled drawings. Each of these drawings is a piece in a Lego boat that I made. And in this picture, I labeled and made the boat make more sense to me, making order from chaos. Here we have a picture from our 9th grader, and she answered the question, how does knowing we have the potential to become like him, exalted, glorified celestial beings, change the way you think about this event? She says, when this question is asked, it makes me feel loved inside. Knowing that he gave me a body and agency to choose helps me to understand his love for me. It makes me think I have a chance and motivates me to grow and be his warrior again. And here is our 11th grader answering the same question. It's like watching a painter make a beautiful painting and knowing that it is possible with enough practice and teaching to be able to do the same. It's an empowering thought. It's also a sort of comforting thought. Nothing is ever really totally out of control. As for the actual organization of the chaos, it is a testament to the power and knowledge of God and other celestial beings. We talked about the war in heaven, which is presented in many of those resources we've already highlighted. That Satan, or Lucifer, fought against Jesus Christ and Adam, and they fought over this agency of man. Satan believed that man should be forced and not be allowed to make his own choice, but Jesus knew that without agency we would never be able to grow or become anything more than what we were, and the purpose of creating this earth as a testing ground would have been completely flawed. Here are some of the pictures that were drawn by the students of what that war might have looked like. They were also supposed to identify themselves in the war, which side they thought they would have been fighting on. We talk about if you're here on earth, you were fighting on the side of Jesus Christ. If you were not fighting on the side of Jesus Christ, you would not have come to this earth with a body. We cover all of this in detail in the links that are above. I hope you enjoyed our presentation of lesson number 1, the primordial waters, making order from chaos. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.